The woman kept scratching her face, as if something was inside, about to break out any moment. Just a moment ago, paramedics were called out. A woman had been injured at the airport, but when they asked for further details, security said they couldn't explain. Although the woman was in excruciating pain, they couldn't see what was wrong. The paramedics entered the office with doubt, only to see the woman looking extremely distressed. It seemed her face had been hit. But as the paramedics examined her closely, they noticed something moving inside her face. They asked the woman what it was. The woman replied it was just a mosquito bite. She hadn't expected it to swell up so much, and now she felt something trying to crawl out. Brett guessed it might be some kind of parasite, and said the woman needed to be taken to the hospital immediately, but security stopped them, saying the woman might be causing a biohazard, and must be quarantined at the airport. At that moment, the woman seemed to be in even greater pain. Brett quickly took out an ice pack, pressed it on the woman's face, and used the cold to slow the parasite's activity. Then she said the situation was urgent, and the woman had to go to the hospital right now. So do you know what was inside the woman's face? To make Halloween unforgettable, a man made a pumpkin head. He ended up with his head stuck inside. The firefighters barely held back their laughter as they rushed to help. The captain stepped up to test it, realizing the pumpkin was tightly wedged. He then instructed team to find some lube to try again. Buck brought the lube. Eddie applied it around the man's neck. The two tried pulling together, but it didn't work as well. The man shouted that his neck hurt. Chim suggested lifting it slightly to check the neck's condition. Then they noticed a rash on his neck, likely a bacterial infection or an allergy. Chim asked how long the pumpkin had been kept. The girl replied it had been over a month. Chim immediately understood. The inside of the pumpkin had probably rotted, breeding a large amount of bacteria. By now, the man's face might even be swollen like a pumpkin. At that moment, the man suddenly began coughing uncontrollably, then fell to the ground. Chim guessed he aspirated pumpkin guts. Now his life was at risk, requiring emergency measures. Buck grabbed a buzzsaw and carefully began to cut. Everyone watched anxiously, fearing he might cut the man's head. In the end, Buck only sawed through the outer shell, successfully freeing the man. Chim immediately used a suction device to clear the pumpkin guts from his airway. Within seconds, the man regained his breath, self-mockingly calling himself stupid for nearly being killed by a pumpkin. Buck said, "That's nothing, I've seen funnier things," and just then,
I think I dislocated my shoulder.
Dispatch, we're going to need an additional RA unit.
in the massive fire, the man was burned. Only when they removed his hand did they realize he was shielding a child beneath him. After moving the man, they found he had protected his 3 children and wife beneath him. Thanks to his protection, the children and his wife were still alive. But this great father had no pulse or heartbeat. The paramedic didn't want to accept this outcome. She connected him to a monitor, hoping to catch any sign of life. But unfortunately, there was no trace of life left in him. Seeing the children he saved with his life, Casey rushed over to perform CPR on him, hoping for a miracle. He wished the man could open his eyes once more to see his children.
Casey.
Let him try, Shaq. Come on!
Casey kept calling his name as if it could awaken him from his slumber. In the end, a teammate had to stop Casey's futile efforts and declared the man dead. All the firefighters' eyes turned red, but they had to accept reality. Back at the fire station, as Dawson was tidying up the ambulance, she found a charred doll. It seemed to be accidentally left behind by the children, so Casey decided to take the opportunity to return the doll and check on the man's family. But unexpectedly, the man's wife furiously blamed them for his death.
How can you come here? If you'd gotten us out sooner, my children would still have a father.
The firefighters were shocked and filled with sorrow. Later, the woman filed a lawsuit accusing them of wrongful death. When they heard about this, they were in disbelief. They hadn't expected to risk their lives in the fire, only to end up with this outcome. Soon the court day arrived. The firefighters donned formal suits, which they rarely wore. But upon seeing the woman's haggard face, their resentment faded. Casey described the rescue details as thoroughly as possible, but recalling the man's heroic actions, he broke down. Kelly took over filling in the remaining details. At this moment, Casey calmed himself.
I'm lucky enough to work with some of the best, bravest firefighters in the world. What your husband did, save his family, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen.
The woman cried out loud. She withdrew her accusation and thanked the firefighters for their efforts. Now, without her husband's protection, she would have to be strong on her own in the future. The firefighters were just doing an inspection, but the man, due to panic, jumped directly from upstairs. Oh, it hurts! All the guy firefighters flinched when they saw that. The reason the man did this was all because of a fire that had just occurred. When the firefighters arrived, they found computers everywhere at the site. A boy was still trying to repair. The firefighter quickly pulled the boy away. Just as they were about to cut off the power supply, sparks were already flying in the distribution box. What's worse, there was no water in the fire hydrant. Watching the fire grow bigger and bigger, the firefighter then noticed a swimming pool nearby, so they immediately threw the hose down. The fire was soon extinguished. The boy told the firefighters that they were running a crypto farm and he was just a college student. It was the faulty wiring that caused the fire. Upon learning that there were more computers at his boss's place, the firefighters were concerned about fire hazards there too. So they went straight there. The man tried to run from the firefighters when saw them, and thus there was a tolerance for pain that could be felt even through the screen. The man shouted for help, saying his daughter had chased after a kite and was lifted into the sky by it. Now she was clinging to a power line, at risk of falling at any moment. To make matters worse, the kite had touched a transformer box, sparking and crackling with electric fire. If the girl were hit by the current, the consequences would be very bad. The firefighters quickly set up a ladder. There was no time to waste in the rescue. The firefighters soon reached the girl's side, but they couldn't directly pull her to safety. The power line she held was live, and any physical contact would complete a circuit, putting everyone in danger. The only solution was to loop a rope around her leg and have her release her grip. Meanwhile, her parents anxiously shouted below, demanding the firefighters act faster. Focused, the firefighters continued carefully, ensuring the rope didn't touch the girl. Soon one leg was secured. Suddenly, the transformer box emitted another loud spark, making everyone tense up. Fortunately, nothing went wrong. The safety rope was securely fastened. Stella told the girl to release her grip after a count of 3, but the girl, terrified, saw the transformer sparking nearby. Stella, sensing the urgency, encouraged her to trust her and bravely follow instructions. As Stella counted 1 to 3, the girl instinctively let go, falling safely into the firefighters' arms. The rescue was a success and the girl landed safely. A man carjacked a woman at knife point. What was even more despairing was that the woman's baby was still inside. She chased after, wanting to get her child back. The robber paid no heed, driving straight onto the road. The woman quickly dialed 911. The cops soon tracked him down, but they could only follow from behind because there was a baby in the car. They didn't dare to hastily intervene, but only slow it down. Now fire trucks and police cars formed a blockade, completely sealing off the road. However, the man didn't intend to surrender. He swiftly veered the car onto another lane, but he fell into the trap set by the police. The fire truck surrounded him. He drove onto the shoulder, attempting to overtake, but the fire truck didn't give him the chance. The man abruptly stopped the car, dashed through the fence. Then the car plunged into a pool. It quickly sank to the bottom. The man swam out of the car, completely ignoring the baby inside. The captain quickly dove into the water. He struggled to open the door with all his might, finding the seatbelt hard to release. He took out a pocket knife and cut through the seatbelt. Then he held up the baby and handed it to a teammate. After checking, the paramedics found the baby had no pulse or breath. They immediately started CPR. The 911 operator, the police and firefighters at the scene anxiously waited. With a sharp cry, the baby finally woke up. The man named Kevin was really unlucky. He just went to the rooftop to make a phone call, but ended up falling into a gap between the walls, with his feet in the air and landing on his backside. The firefighters who came to rescue him were stunned. How could they even pull off this rescue? Just a moment ago, the firefighters received a fire alarm, but upon arriving, they found only a burning stake and a TV left on, while the homeowner was nowhere to be found. At that moment, a neighbor walked over, saying he had heard Kevin on the phone an hour ago. Due to the poor signal in their building, Kevin must have gone to the rooftop to make his call. The firefighters went up to look for Kevin, and they heard faint cries for help from the gap between the walls. When they looked down, they saw Kevin stuck with his feet in the air. Since they couldn't climb down to rescue him, the firefighters had to make a hole in the wall where Kevin was trapped, to prevent him from inhaling dust and to make communication easier. The firefighters lowered a mask and a walkie-talkie down to him, but by then, the man was extremely weak from crush syndrome. If he didn't receive treatment soon, he could be in serious trouble. With time running out, the firefighters quickly started drilling, but Kevin was barely holding on. He said he was so tired and just wanted to sleep, a sign that he was reaching his physical limit. To keep Kevin's spirits up, Kelly, after learning that he liked watching UFC, intentionally insulted Kevin's favorite fighter. Sure enough, Kevin got fired up as soon as he heard it, yelling that he'd make Kelly pay once he got out. Kelly was thrilled to hear this and kept provoking Kevin further. Amid Kevin's continuous shouting, the wall finally broke open. The paramedics quickly went forward to give Kevin an IV, and the firefighters continued drilling the wall. As the wall finally collapsed, Kevin's legs were exposed. They gently laid his legs flat and lifted him onto the stretcher.